Hello and welcome. Today, we are going to build a really solid foundation in French. We're going to break down two of the trickiest parts for any new learner, getting that pronunciation just right and really mastering the core verbs that power basically every single sentence. If you stick with me, you'll walk away with the tools you need to start speaking with some real confidence.
So, have you ever wondered what gives French that distinct, that almost musical quality? It can sound so incredibly complex, but here's the secret. That music isn't magic. It's actually a system, and it's built on a few simple, learnable rules. And today, we're going to crack that code together.
So here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the music of French, its core sounds. Then, we'll get to know the two pillar verbs that pretty much hold the entire language up. From there, we'll uncover some super predictable patterns, meet a few common rule breakers, and then finally, we'll put it all together to start talking about the future. All right, first stop, phonetics. Let's dive right into the specific sounds that create that unique French character and its beautiful flowing rhythm.
First up is the letter C. Now this one is a bit of a chameleon, you could say. Its sound changes completely depending on the vowel that comes right after it. So, before an A, O, or U, it has a hard K sound, like in café. But if it's before an E, or Y, it softens to an S sound, like in cinema or merci. It's a simple rule, but it makes a huge difference. So, how does French deal with this? What if you need that soft S sound before an A, O, or U? Well, this is where the language has this clever little hack, the Cedilla, or la Cedilla. Without it, the word for boy, garçon, would be pronounced garçon. That tiny little mark is basically a signal that says, hey, make this a soft S sound. Pretty neat, right?
And this right here is the real secret to that fluent French sound, the liaison. Instead of having choppy, separate words, French loves to link them all together. So when a word ending in a consonant, like the S in lace, bumps up against a word starting with a vowel, like the E in offense, you connect them. That S actually transforms into a Z sound, creating that super smooth les enfants.
Okay, here's a fantastic tip to help you sound more natural. In spoken French, that final E on a word is often totally silent. It's called the E caduc, or the disappearing E. So, a word like table isn't pronounced table, it's just table. It's a small change, but it makes your spoken French sound so much more authentic.
Now that we've got a feel for the sounds, let's look at the engines of every French sentence, the verbs. We'll start with the two great pillars of the language, avoir and être. You are going to use these constantly, so getting them down is absolutely non-negotiable.
First up is avoir, which means to have. This verb is completely irregular, so it's one you just kind of have to memorize. The forms are j'ai, tu as, il a. And now look here. Nous avons, vous avez, ils ont. See how that liaison rule we just learned comes right back into play? That's the thing about French. Everything connects. Our second pillar is être, to be. And just like avoir, it's completely irregular. Je suis, tu es, il est, and so on. Now here's a little pro tip if you want to sound like a local. In casual speech, you'll almost never hear a full je suis. It gets shortened down to suis. It sounds like suis. So saying je suis fatigué for I'm tired is something you'll hear all the time.
Okay, I know what you might be thinking. Do I have to memorize every single verb like that? And the answer is a huge relief. No, you don't. While a few key verbs are irregular, most of them fall into these large, predictable families. You learn the pattern for one, and you've just learned how to handle hundreds of others. And here is a perfect example of that system, using the biggest verb group of all, the ones ending in ER. It's a simple three-step formula. You take a verb like parler, to speak. Step 1, you find the root by just dropping the ER. Step 2, you're left with parle. And step 3, you just add the correct ending for your subject. It's like a predictable machine. Hey, remember our little pronunciation lesson on the Cedilla? Well, here's where it comes back in grammar. For verbs that end in CER, like commencer, which means to begin, the nous form needs a Cedilla. Why? Because the ending is ons. Without that Cedilla, C before O would make a hard K sound. The Cedilla is there to keep that soft S sound, so we say commençons.
All right, now for the second major group of regular verbs, the ones ending in IR, like finir, to finish. The pattern is also very consistent, but here's the big giveaway.
Notice that is sound that just pops up in all the plural forms. Nous finissons, vous finissez, ils finissent. That is your telltale sign that you're dealing with this kind of IR verb.
Okay, every language has its rebels, and French is definitely no exception. Let's meet the famous rule breakers. These verbs just ignore the patterns we've just learned, but they're so incredibly common that you really do have to know them by heart.
First on the list is aller, to go. And this one is a bit of a trickster. You see it ends in ER, so you'd think it's regular, but nope, it is completely irregular. As you can see, the forms change pretty dramatically, from vais to allons to vont. This verb is absolutely essential, so it's worth the effort.
Next up is faire, which means to do or to make. The singular forms are pretty straightforward. But watch out for the plural forms. This is where it gets a little tricky. The vous form is fait, which breaks that usual EZ pattern you'd expect. And the ils form is the completely different font. So lock those two in your memory.
Here we've got vouloir, to want. Notice how the root of the verb actually changes here. It's veut in the singular forms, veut. But then it switches over to voul for the plural nous and vous forms. This is a common pattern for this type of irregular verb, which brings us right to its partner.
And here is that partner, pouvoir, meaning can or to be able to. Look how similar that pattern is. You've got peut in the singular. Vouloir and pouvoir are like two sides of the same coin. Seriously, if you learn them together as a pair, they are so much easier to remember.
So now we have all these pieces, pronunciation rules, our pillar verbs, the patterns, and even the rule breakers. Let's put them together and do something incredibly powerful. Talk about the future. And you know the best part? The formula is shockingly simple.
This is the formula for what's called the near future, or le futur proche. It's incredibly common and so useful. You simply take our irregular verb aller, to go, conjugate it for whatever your subject is, and then you just add the infinitive. That's the original unconjugated form of any other verb. That's it.
And here is that formula in action. We take je vais from our rule-breaking verb aller, then we simply add the infinitive of our regular verb, parler. Put them together. Je vais parler. I am going to speak. Just like that, you can say what you are going to do with any verb you know. How cool is that?
So let's pull this all together. What are the key takeaways from today? First, French pronunciation isn't random. It's a system of rules and flow. Second, the verbs avoir and être are the absolute pillars of the language. You gotta know them. Third, beyond them, most verbs follow predictable patterns. And finally, you can unlock the future tense with one simple formula, aller plus an infinitive, from sound to sentence. We've journeyed from single sounds all the way to complete sentences. You now have the fundamental building blocks of the French language. So my question to you is, now that you have these tools, what's the first sentence you're going to build about your future? Go on, give it a try.